Welcome to Stackuj podcast. This is a second of a special three-part series that I recorded on BTC Prague. And during the series, we explore how Bitcoin is adopted around the world. So in this episode, I talked to Giacomo Zucco and Mir Liponi. They are longtime Bitcoiners from Italy. So what we discuss is the Bitcoin community in Italy, various threats to Bitcoin, and also Giacomo's talk from BTC Prague that's called Why Ordinals Are Retarded. This show is brought to you by Trezor. Trezor, that's the original hardware wallet and a hardware wallet pioneer. If you go to Trezor.io, you can check out the selection of various models. My favorite one is Trezor Model T because it comes with the option to set up a Shamir backup, which is a type of split recovery seed that greatly enhances your security of your recovery seed. So go to Trezor.io and check out the Trezor hardware wallets. The second sponsor of the show is Setsback, Setsback.com. That's a shopping rewards platform that allows you to stack free sets while you're shopping. And the payouts are over Lightning Network. There's no KYC. And I believe it's just a brilliant project because you can shop, for example, on booking.com or AliExpress, and you can get some free sets for that. So check out setsback.com for free sets while you're shopping. Another sponsor of the show is Brains. It's brains.com with double I's, and Brains is a Bitcoin mining tools company. So if you want to know whether Bitcoin mining would be profitable for you given your ASIC model and electricity price, you can go to insight@brains.com and that's Insight. And Brains is also a book publisher because they published my book that's called Bitcoin, Separation of Money and State. So you can go to brains.com with double I's and check out the Bitcoin mining tools and also some of the books. The final sponsor of the show is biomasičko.cz, biomasičko.cz. That's a biofarm here in Czech Republic that specializes in free-range grass-fed cows. So if you are looking for a high-quality beef while living in Czech Republic, you can go to biomasičko.cz, use the promo code Stackuj for 10% off, and you will get high-quality beef straight to your door. Now on to the show with Giacomo and Mir. Hello and welcome to Stackuj podcast. Today we have a very special episode because I have the great honor of welcoming two longtime Bitcoiners from Italy, Giacomo Zucco and Mir. Welcome. Thank you for taking the time of the conference to come here.
Thank you for having us.
And I've got a special gift for you. This is my new book, Bitcoin, Separation of Money and State.
Tk you very much.
So this is for you, Giacomo.
Thanks.
Wow.
Thanks. Looking forward to read it.
Yeah, thanks. And Giacomo is a long-time Bitcoiner working on RGB, being an advisor to many projects, Bitcoin only, Bitcoin focused. So maybe tell me a little bit about what are you up to right now?
Right now, I am mostly trying to focus on education, basically. Since for many years, my job was consultancy to fiat entities, mostly to banks, insurance companies, energy companies, in order to make money. And I was spending money in open source development of Bitcoin stuff. You mentioned RGB, but I supported open test stamps, standard development, or the very beginning of BDK library development, or the beginning of even the Bolt standardization for Lightning. It was basically, it started in our offices in Milan, and we provided not the technical content, of course, but mostly the organizational support for this kind of stuff. So my job was to earn money from the fiat world and to give it to the Bitcoin development world. And right now I'm starting to feel that consultancy is a little bit boring after many years. And you have to pretend that the blockchain project of the client makes sense, and then you have to demolish kindly. It's kind of repetitive. So education seems like something that excites me more. The problem is that it's not as easy to monetize because it's harder to monetize basically. So we are trying to create a good education network, and that will probably be a great part of my time, and I will still support, of course, the open source part.
Right. So, Mir, what are you up to?
Well, strongly believe in the adoption of Bitcoin, and I am creating a new Bitcoiners. So basically, during the last years, I have been doing the mom. I just have my second son some month ago, so I'm still lurking the space and I help him whatever I can, but I'm focused being a mom. The last thing I have done actually was I was really focused on communication and marketing for the Bitcoin space, and I strongly believe that we need very good and ethical type of communication and marketing in the field. So I'm looking forward to start again doing that, because I still think that things are moving, but we need something further because the services and the tools for Bitcoiners are expanding tremendously. And so even that part has to grow.
Right. And in terms of Bitcoin and Italy, if you could describe like what's the Bitcoin community in Italy like, and what maybe is like the flavor of the Bitcoin community in Italy? Because, for example, in Czech Republic, we are quite into like non-KYC peer-to-peer Bitcoin. We have this Vexel Foundation announced at the conference. So, but that's not the case like in other countries, let's say. So what's it like in Italy?
Yeah, Italy's story is particular because when we started, we were the first of a wave of Bitcoiners in Italy, basically. There were some Bitcoiners that were from a generation previous, like 2010, but they were a little bit lone wolves.
Yeah.
We created the first communities, basically the first monthly meetup in Milan, the first conferences in 2016, Scaling Bitcoin. It was the first Bitcoin conference in Italy. So there was that kind of scene. It was mostly developers. We were hanging around, socializing, but it was a developer kind of environment. So not many parties, mostly like technical discussions in an office, nerd talk over lunch. It was very funny. It was very entertaining, very good, but it was not a typical, it was very nerdy in a way.
Yeah, and also you have to add that there was the barrier of the technology, but also the barrier of the language, because our meetup were with guests, and usually the guests were talking in English.
Yeah, it was all in English.
Yeah, so it was very funny for us, but for people coming to the meetups, were kind of a struggle.
Yeah, we arrived to huge number, like when Antonopoulos was there in, I
Crazy
think
numbers,
it was 2016, 2017, was probably 500 people at the meetup or something. So it was big, but the speakers were all internationals, and everybody was kind of nerdy. So it was very technology focused. There was a strong non-KYC crypto anarchist spirit, but less political than, for example, in Paranipolis. There was less political activism, mostly technical stuff. People there were Lawrence Naum, the creator of Green, and now Jade, Riccardo Casata, now working on BDK, previously on Eternity Wall, Valerio and Luca Vaccaro, but many other people. Federico Tenga is still around, working on RGB right now, Aleko Sfirini and Daniela, but mostly developers. So there was a hiatus because we closed down our research hub in Milan in 2018. I moved to Switzerland to do basically consultancy in Switzerland. Many other developers moved around, spread out, and for a while the community basically in a way died. There was a strong period without any kind of stuff going on. Then recently, starting a little more than 1 year ago.
Yeah, it was 1 year ago.
New people started to build stuff again. There is an Italian podcast, that Bitcoin Italian podcast, that became very popular. A few mailing lists by Federico Rivi, Turtlecute, or Massimo Musumeci, who is in Switzerland but does content in Italian. This content was a little bit less technical, so still technical, but more about social issues and stuff. Like the podcast was mostly about social implications of Bitcoin, political implication, and then there were all in Italian, as Mir was saying.
There
was
really
a switch in communication style. It was so more approachable. So, for example, with a guy that is here, like Startercute, he was with us at a dinner, and I was telling stories of the first generation of Bitcoin Italians, and he asked me to basically present this story in a podcast, which had a tremendous success, and people were eager to learn about the history of Bitcoin in Italy, especially. And so there is this second wave that has more new enthusiasm, like fresh blood, fresh enthusiasm. The guys from the first wave are still there, but they are a little bit less active. Maybe we're tired,
But to put in perspective, I have created a list of Italian resources. It's a list on GitHub at the beginning, because I wanted people to share the list with great stuff only in Italian. And at the beginning, I have probably 12, 20 resources in Italian that I endorsed, because I wanted to share good stuff for newbies, but also, and yes, I was like, this is going to grow in time, over time. But in a year, right now, I cannot keep up with all the stuff that people are creating. So it's just like from this podcast Giacomo mentioned and other initiative right now, there's plenty of contents, and people are stimulated to create better contents all the time. So the quality is super high, and also for the first time, the quantity.
Yeah, but even of people like in Balticoni Badger 2019, for example, 4 Italians, maybe 5. Right now, there is a group of at least 20 Italians who are very committed, very knowledgeable. And as Miss said, even the speed. I gave a lesson in Italian in Torino University, and a few days later, some guy that I don't know, Musclesats, created a website with all my lesson, including graphs that I drawn on the blackboard, redrawn for the website, completely translated in English and in Italian. So the energy, the amount of people and the energy and the quality, I would say, because back then we shared a lot of naivety about some topics. These people are trained by our mistakes and our histories. So
absolutely.
It's very good.
Yeah, it's really good, but they are also many more. We were just few all the time, so we couldn't handle all the stuff. So we did our best, but it's really beautiful to see this community growing every day. I think it's something very specific to Italy in a way, because I'm not seeing around Europe other community that are growing so fast and so strong. And I wouldn't say the same thing 2 years ago, probably 1 year ago.
Yeah, so maybe if you asked it 1 year ago, we would say, not be.
There's something. But right now, it's beautiful to see that from little seed, they start exploding just like in acceleration, and because everybody's stimulated by the contents of other people, by the quality of other people. So it's just like a critical mass that is expanding. Yeah,
it's great to hear. And maybe what's the situation like with mainstream media in Italy? Because here in Czech Republic, like a lot of the journalists made their homework, and they know who to reach out to. So it's not that dumb anymore, the reporting on Bitcoin. So now,
it's terrible.
In a way, it's even worse because there's, right now the number of retarded takes on mainstream media are even more, because
it's even worse.
Yeah, in 2016 there were very few articles about Bitcoin. Then when the 2017 ICO bubble hit, there were many negative articles, but they were granted, they were justified. Like there was a lot of skepticism for the ICO bubble, which was entirely justified. So I was interviewed by the national TV about ICO bubble. I say something negative, and they promoted it because they were against this crazy bubble. But right now that the bubble is burst and we are back to build realistic stuff, I think that the quality of general, but globally, I think that the quality of journalism all around the world deteriorated even more, if possible. The amount of ideology, of detachment from reality, and Italy is just following the trend. So I'm happy to hear that Czech Republic may be against the trend a little bit, but Italy is just following a general trend.
Just to make an example, it was a funny article, actually. It was on Corriere della Sera, which is the fourth newspaper in Italy, and the article was describing mining. I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed just telling what was written inside. It was just like describing the mining like the people, like math people were calculating manually. Yes, the nonce. Of course, it wasn't written just like the nonce, but the concept was just like the nonce, calculating all the time for every single block. It was so funny to read that.
The idea was people using Bitcoin on cell phones, they were basically democratically voting and solving math
there
problems.
was also that part on votation. Yeah.
But not even with the Google search you can go so
No,
bad.
I mean they are so good. And also if they use the ChatGPT.
Yeah, ChatGPT is bad, but it's so much better than Italian journalists.
Well, at least they are really creative because I don't know how to come up with something like that.
And they're still pronouncing like they still like write on writing Sakamoto instead of Nakamoto, so they cannot even get the basic name right after years.
Probably at the beginning they were like, we know nothing, we should ask other people. But right now they are using some resources and they are just interpreting by themselves, filling the gaps in a very creative way. So it's really embarrassing the level. So usually they don't ask us anything. There's no connection with the media. So this is the reason why I created that list I told you before, because I wanted people to get informed outside the media, the Italian resources.
It's better to bypass the mainstream media completely.
Right.
There's not even a point right now in trying to convert it into something reasonable.
Okay, right. So regarding like the dump stuff, so your title here at BTC Prague of the talk is "Ordinals are retarded."
Yes.
So please give us like a rundown.
Well, I still think that the most obvious meaning of the word will apply pretty well to this situation, but I will try to make a play on the word to try to explain that they are not just retarded in the sense they are stupid, because they are, but they're also retarded in the sense that there is a retarded delay in a reaction to something that was already discussed and implemented and debated and put to bed in 2012 and 2013. So everything which is happening now is the typical eternal September of the internet. So new people coming in, not knowing the history, and they think that something like tracking Satoshis individually is something new, some innovation. It wasn't. It was implemented, done, discussed, debated, and then eventually abandoned in 2012 because there were problems with scalability, problem with privacy, problem with fungibility, then inscribing, so basically spamming generic information on the blockchain was the core of entire startups. Like one of our guys in the initial community, Riccardo Casatta, he created an entire service called Eternity Wall, where you could put love messages forever on the blockchain. And there was a debate between him and Luke Dasher about is it spam, is it sustainable? And he closed down basically the startup after years. It was successful because it just made some math. He said, if even just, this stuff can get to basically 50 gigabyte every year. 50 gigabyte is a few seconds of Twitter. So if even just for text, people are using outside a very small circle, this stuff is useful, is useless. And it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't provide censorship resistance that a torrent could not provide. If you want to timestamp, there is open timestamp. So all this discussion that we're having now was already there. The only people that are falling for it are new people that are innocent of falling for it. They just don't know the history, and grifters and scammers that are ignoring the history for a purpose to use that for personal visibility or for some kind of financial gain.
All right, perfect. I'll link the talk to about the ordinals. So you recently tweeted, and this is a nice introductory tweet for this discussion. That you tweeted 2 points, that we should want to change Bitcoin very slowly, if at all. And the second one was anything you can do on, quotes, another chain can be done on MySQL. And the only reason to use another chain is for scams, and every crypto, not Bitcoin, is a scam. So first of all, if you could explain why should we have this conservative approach to Bitcoin development, and you're basically suggesting that we shouldn't introduce any new changes at all.
Well, not at all. Slowly, if at all. But actually, this tweet was a response to another tweet that was trying to create a contradiction. So the other tweet was basically saying, Bitcoiners, you have to pick one. Either you want Bitcoin to change slowly because everything that Bitcoin cannot do, it shouldn't do it, and you should do it on other chains. So The first option is Bitcoin doesn't change very fast, if at all, and use other chains. Or you say that other chains are useless and stupid because Bitcoin will do everything. And I think these 2 points are both strawman. Nobody's actually in the Bitcoin maximalist community is arguing these 2 points. And so I rephrase the points in a way that I think is consistent. So Bitcoin, so the position that Bitcoin should not change because you will do stuff on other chains, I think is unrealistic, because other chains do not have a meaningful probability to be decentralized and censorship resistant, and incentives are all broken because you can still basically print money, so people will basically pivot to printing money and pumping bags. So the whole incentive part of altcoins is broken. So Bitcoin will have to be slow to change, if at all, mostly because Bitcoin is not a product or a service or a brand. It is an infrastructure and it's a protocol. So like the rules of chess, like the internet itself, TCP/IP, if you think about that, TCP/IP version 4 doesn't change since 1984. It is settled. And because it's settled, because it's strong, because it's consistent and reliable, people could build on top of it many things. Now, you cannot say that the internet didn't change. The internet changed a lot since the 80s. It's unrecognizable. But the protocol, the base rule never changed. So people could use the stability of the base layer to build new stuff on top. The base layer IP is still since the 80s. The TCP layer changed a little bit more. The HTTP layer changed a lot in the 90s as well. We had HTTPS, HTTP2, HTML5, so it changed a lot. On top, you have the platforms, the private proprietary platforms like MySpace, and MySpace died to make space for Facebook and now for TikTok or whatever. And on top of that, you have the application on Facebook and stuff like that. So it's a stack. And the lower parts of the stack, they have to stay still, not because evolution is bad in itself, but because changing fast creates centralization. So if you have to change very, very fast, you need coordination to agree about the change. When you need coordination, you also need centralization. And centralization is a vector of attack to attack Bitcoin. So Bitcoin must be slow, especially a low layer. Lightning will change much more. So Bitcoin consensus should change very slow, if at all. Lightning will change more. And services on top of Lightning, like LSPs, will change a lot, and wallets and tools will change dramatically. And standards, so QR codes, addresses, standard, they will change a lot. System of backing up private keys, that will change a lot. Yeah. But the rules of Bitcoin will probably have to slow down even more than now and be harder and harder to change. And the second point is this doesn't mean that you need other chains to do the rest, because the rest is mostly, so Bitcoin is decentralized digital scarcity that you can move around. That's it. Everything else is stuff that you can do on a database. I since many years, I shield this link to myblockchain.xyz. It's a beautiful website where you download a private blockchain, which is basically MySQL, a fork, where tables are renamed into chains and record into blocks and rows into blocks and fields and columns into transaction fields or something, because that's the only thing you need. When you have a point of, so decentralization makes sense because you eliminate single point of failure. When you do have one single point of failure, there's literally no point in not reusing it for other purposes, because you still have one.
Right. Yeah. Perfect. Thanks. And Mir, I forgot to ask you, do you have any talk here at BTC Prague?
Yes, I'm going to moderate a panel about value for value. I'm very excited about it because I have a very broad knowledge about the topic, so it got me some weeks to keep up with everything. And so we are going to talk about the value for value as a concept, general concept, and then we are going to deep down on Nostr, on podcasting 2.0, and of course all the developments and also the challenges that are arising with this technology. Because when Giacomo was talking about your example of stratification, and I was like, yes, but think of something like Nostr. For example, it was made very, very fast. Right now, what we are going to do, we are going to grow and build from there, or we are going to replace it, because we are, for example, in that protocol at that level. So when it's the time to understand that something is going to be the standard and we can grow something on the layer on the top?
That's a very good question.
Do you have an answer?
Well, yeah, well, it's not precise, but when you know that you arrive to IP version 4 and you can stop evolving, you know, because you cannot evolve anymore because the network will reject attempt to even improve it. You know, it's natural. We don't have to decide to stop. We will just have to accept that the base layer cannot be touched anymore. Nostr is super young. It will have to be changed dramatically to scale. So it will have, also it's not a global consensus system. So on Nostr, not everybody has to agree. Just like on the internet, you can disagree and still be connected. Bitcoin is trickier because you have to agree about the rules. So in Bitcoin, probably we are close. I hope that we are not yet at the version 4. I hope that we can still put in something like any private, something like cross-input signature aggregation to scale even better and to have even more privacy. If we can, that's cool. I hope we are not there, but we may be there. Like very good proposal like any private are pushed since years. And the thing is that there is no, the network is too decentralized to even take a decision to how to activate. Core developers then do not necessarily trust each other or agree with each other. The plebs are not responding to core developers anymore like trusted oracles. Just tell us what to run and we will run. There is more debate. There was a UASF movement. There was a lot of drama during the fork wars. So I think that right now, I hope not, but we may already be at the level at which we cannot touch it anymore. I hope not, because very few changes like maybe CSV, covenants, CISA could actually change dramatically what Bitcoin will be able to do in the future. So you can scale in layers, that's true. But if the base layer is not flexible enough, you cannot build the other layers. So if Bitcoin didn't have SegWit or the script in general, building something like Lightning would be almost impossible, but maybe possible, but super tricky. But the internet had the same problem. Like I remember when there was discussion in the 90s about the first voice to IP communication, like Skype and stuff like that. And people were saying, okay, TCP IP just doesn't scale for this kind of stuff. You must use UDP, but IP itself, there are not enough IP numbers. So we need to change it. And the reality is that we didn't. We just hack it around somehow. We built this shaky structure on top just because we wanted to keep the base layer as is in a reliable way, because only on reliable things you can build. Foundations must be still. This is a very traditional knowledge, right? Foundation must be rock, not sand. On top, you can have a lot of sand, plants, or lava lamps, or whatever you want. But foundations, it's rock.
Right. So, is there any threat to Bitcoin? What could be like? What could really endanger Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think there is a spectrum which goes from stuff which is more probable but probably not very effective to stuff that is less probable but more effective if happened. So government intervention to ban it, I think is very, very probable. Even in the first war, not just in Turkmenistan. I think that the US federal government will probably eventually try to ban Bitcoin, confiscate Bitcoin like it did with gold in the 30s. I think it's game theoretically not certain, but very, very likely. So this is very probable to me, but it will not kill Bitcoin. Just like the prohibition didn't kill alcohol, it just moved it on the black market. If people want something, they will keep using it in the black market. You will just kill the legitimacy of the rule, which is even more for money. In Venezuela, using Bitcoin or US dollars is illegal. And everybody will accept US dollar, including the cop that is supposed to arrest you for using US dollars. So Cuba is the same, basically. And the Soviet Union was the same. Everybody was trading American dollars. So it's unstoppable. But this is very likely. On the other side, you have something which is very unlikely, like a catastrophic, like cutting down the internet entirely on a global scale with atomic explosion, something like that.
So at that point, Bitcoin will be kind of relevant, probably.
Yeah, the last of your problems, So that would be, that. I think that's improbable. I think that the global internet and electricity infrastructure is not perfect, but resilient enough to even maybe withstand a world war. So this is very improbable. But if the global technical infrastructure was completely destroyed, then Bitcoin is useless.
Yeah.
We can use Bitcoin on mesh networks, but we cannot use it on table. When I said rock, I didn't mean literal stone. So you still need electronics, basically.
Yeah.
So that's the scenario. In between, you have a lot of degrees of stuff that is more and more unlikely, but more and more effective, including like social capture, where people will. So the government will not ban it immediately, but will allow it to become so easy that people will just relax and get lazy. During the Cultural Revolution in China, there was a period in which Mao said, let's relax the rules, relax everything, so intellectual can express themselves. So people get lazy, they don't take precaution, they get confident, they get complacent, they write everything they think, and then they sign the name patiently for 10 years, and then they kill them all. So if the government, instead of attacking Bitcoin, kept its cool and managed to leave everything open, like even deregulate markets, eliminate censorship, reduce inflation, so people just say, we don't need Bitcoin anymore, or we need Bitcoin with KYC, AML, right. So people will relax, and then you hit. But I don't think the government is so smart. I think the government responds to
are you trying to give them ideas?
but the government is not people, not even people in government. They are social machines, and they are dumb. Even if people are smart, the machine is dumb. So they react immediately. They see money, they want to grab money, they will try to put a tax on it. They will not think it's better if we create a slow degeneration into regulation.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they also try to find a scapegoat and to give an example. So this is something very tricky. Hopefully, we are not facing the future, but I think unfortunately,
that's a very good point. Like
it's going to happen.
So the fiat world will collapse even without Bitcoin. Help will collapse in itself because it's a Ponzi scheme. So when it will collapse, it will need a scapegoat. And Bitcoin will be a great scapegoat. And so it will attack Bitcoin, which is good because it would be worse if instead of attacking, just created years of completions. Like in a way, governments not attacking Bitcoin for years was bad for Bitcoiners because they started to rely on third parties. So the user will say, what's the problem to just leave my coins on Coinbase? What's the problem to just try to trade 1,000 Ponzi scheme? I mean, no, nothing bad can happen. And then something happens. The later it happens, the worse it is because people just got duped into thinking it was easy. Instead, it would not be easy.
Yeah, on that note, what's your take on Binance and Coinbase being sued by SEC? Like there are people saying like this is the worst thing that could happen to Bitcoin. These are the companies that onboarded most people to Bitcoin. So what's your take on that?
I think they are net negatives, especially Coinbase was an explicit anti-Bitcoin company. They tried to kill the network pushing with a backed implementation BTC1. They sold users to the IRS over complying with IRS. They hired a hacking team. So Coinbase is the worst, and they push any kind of shitcoin possible and imaginable, any kind of Ponzi scheme, any kind of stupid like rug pull. They pushed it. So they are net negative without doubt. It's true that they onboarded a lot of people, just like it's just like saying that heroin pushers onboarded people on pharmaceutical. Technically yes, but basically it on garbage. They poisoned people on a mass scale, but they are net negative. That said, Binance to a minor degree, but also basically the same. It's a giant casino. It's basically just gambling, and maybe can help a little bit for tax avoidance, which is cool, but most is gambling. So I have a very negative opinion of both, but I do not cheer for the SEC attacking them. The reason I do not cheer is that, even if it's true that weak stuff will eventually lose to the attacker, still the attacker is the attacker. The attacker is the problem. Degenerate gamblers are not as much as the problem as people with gun arresting people for consensual trades. Yeah. So I don't like shitcoins, but I don't like people actually using physical violence to prevent people to trade even stupid stuff, including drugs or pornography or whatever you can think is bad individually, but it's not criminal, so you should not criminalize it. So it's just like prohibition. Do I like alcoholism, heavy alcoholism destroying a family? No, it's bad. But do I like prohibition? No, it's even worse. It will create, it's not just morally worse, it does create this stuff. And what I was arguing before the conference is that shitcoins have been partially created by the SEC and regulators. Why? Because the central banks are inflating money. So people cannot save with money anymore. So they need to invest in the market. But then they created barrier to the stock market. So if you are a regular blue collar, you cannot invest in Microsoft. You have to be a qualified investor. So for this reason, if you are not American, if you are not of age, you cannot invest. You're just cut out of the financial market if you are not from a country without KYC deals and tax deals. So a lot of people that cannot save using money because of central banks could not save using stocks because of regulations, and so they felt they had to fall basically to fall for all this crypto bullshit, and they were easy prey because they felt that they need to invest to stay rich or to save wealth, and the only vent was this crypto bubble that was permissionless, at least for a while, because it was centralized, but it was permissionless for a while until the regulators catched up. The other way that it created is that, so basically, in order to avoid regulation, crypto companies had to rely on blockchain woo and crypto woo, a lot of bullshit, fake technology, just as an excuse to avoid regulation. When you create a lot of bullshit and a lot of opacity, this opacity initially may be used to scam the regulator, which is, I think, is morally commendable. But then you reuse it to scam your clients and your investors as well. Because when you create your entire company around bullshit, around obfuscation, around fake stuff, eventually you will try to, I mean, it's very hard to remain honest to your clients when your entire business model is basically vaporware or like a bullshit hype.
Right. And in terms of like possibly real threats to Bitcoin, what's your take on quantum computers? I believe you recorded a talk
in Bratislava.
Yeah, in Bratislava. So like if you could give us the TLDR of that.
Yeah, not scared at all. It's possible, but there are many things that are more likely, including like a giant meteor destroying Earth, or like nanobacteria becoming ASICs and turning all the Earth in ASICs, like the paperclip scenario. So there are many things, or like, I don't know, warp drive starships that will make mining problematic because you will have to send blocks out to Alpha Centaurus using subspace transmission. So that's possible in theoretical physics, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. The problem with quantum computing is that in order to break, for example, ACDSA or Schnorr is the same thing, basically elliptic curve cryptography, you need tens of thousands of logical qubits. So quantum bits that are error corrected. But we don't have even one quantum qubit right now. What we have are physical qubits that are not quantum corrected. So we have like 10, 100, maybe we can get to 200 realistically. It's very hard to scale. But the idea is that if you put thousands and thousands of physical qubits in coherence together with a traditional classical computer, then this stuff can create one logical qubit. And now you need thousands of those, which is not, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's people in the bibliothèque, in the library of Alexandria before Christ, imagining going to the moon. It's just the same. It is possible, but we don't even know if it's practically feasible. We are so far away to even imagine that, so it's not a threat.
But now we have AI.
So the other hype.
No, but they are going to create quantum computing very soon.
Maybe. But still, nanobacteria.
We are very skeptical of AI too, so it was just a joke.
Same. Well, not the same thing. Quantum computing may be more overblown than AI. Like AI proved, like language models proved to be something at least fun. While quantum computer didn't even prove to be useful for something. Like quantum supremacy is producing noise over some probability distribution. There's nothing useful yet you can do it. Maybe you will be able to do physical simulation, maybe pharmaceutical stuff like protein folding, but quantum breaking cryptography is still so far away.
Yeah, and in terms of your other talks, you recently gave a talk for Strike about Bitcoin cultures.
Yeah.
I really like that. And you built on Rigel Walsh's talk at Baltic Honey Badger in Riga. So I will link both of these. So you basically divide the Bitcoin subcultures into cypherpunks, startuppers, and maximalists. You go into like what's the motivation for each group and why, what are the intersections of the group with like some really nice like terms for the intersections. And so do you think some of these subcultures has like the main say in terms of how Bitcoin evolves? Like, is there some dominant subculture in Bitcoin?
I think there is a cyclic phenomenon. Like at the very beginning, before Bitcoin was even born, the cultural roots were mostly cypherpunk, but not entirely though. For example, Satoshi was mentioning e-gold that was created by an Austrian economics fund, and he was quoting Mises. Satoshi was quoting Mises' regression theorem, and Mises was a maximalist antiliterum for sure. So, but mostly it was cypherpunk. When Bitcoin started, around the time we started to get in contact with Bitcoin 2013, it was mostly a startup thing. Like the word on the street was normalize it, it's just technology. There's no political, nothing political there, nothing to see. It's not disruptive. It's not just a startup. It's just a startup thing. And then the maximalist wave hit, even also as a reaction to many other things, for a reaction to the startuppers were mostly shitcoiners. So because the point was to use the Bitcoin meme to create a startup like in Silicon Valley. So everybody had to recreate Bitcoin as a startup. So as a reaction, we had the wave of maximalism, which is probably the most prominent right now. But of course, there are always reaction to reaction. So now there is a rediscover of the cypherpunk ideas. I think that if we have to choose importance, the startup part, in my opinion, is the only one Bitcoin can to some degree do without. So the mass adoption meme, like the normalization, companies, that's probably something that is nice to have, but it's probably possible to even sacrifice. While cypherpunk and maximalism, I think they are two faces of the same coin. I think that you cannot have privacy without scarcity or scarcity without privacy. So the people will tell you, some maximalists, not all, but will tell you, as long as Bitcoin is scarce, so we have the 21 million, we can be all KYC, it doesn't matter. We will just have sound money. But that's not true, because when there is no privacy, government can easily force people to run a different node that will create inflation, because you are easy to enforce. And other people will tell you, as long as you have privacy, you don't need scarcity in any degree. But that's also not true, because we know, even from the world of video games in the 90s, we know that when there is no scarcity in the asset, the monetary function just collapses, and then you have bad incentives to reprint more money. There is a great article by Der Gigi about digital scarcity, mentioning like Diablo 2 as an example of scarcity dynamic on the web. So we need, we really, well, as well, like when you have privacy, but not liquidity. So if nobody is using your money, your anonymity set will be very low, because nobody is using your money. So in order to trade, you will have to enter to very illiquid markets where it's easy to identify you, even if you use the best technology. So privacy needs scarcity, scarcity needs privacy. There are just two faces of the same coin. So cypherpunk, so I think that a good Bitcoiner to understand Bitcoin should be a cypherpunk and a maximalist. And maybe you can sacrifice the startup part.
Right, thanks. So in terms of Bitcoin tools, what's on your radar? What's the interesting stuff? You are an advisor to some projects. So what?
Well, I'm advisor to many projects that are doing different stuff, from Satsback to Relay to a few ventures. So many different things. I think that right now, for example, when I teach, the tools that I teach are usually how to run your node, where the main thing is still Bitcoin Core, and how to basically buy without KYC. I'm very interested in RoboSats, which works very well. I try to teach BizQ, but it's a little bit complex. I'm very excited about something like Vexel, which is starting right now. But mostly I focus on non-KYC stuff. Or if you really have to go with the banking system, at least the smallest KYC print possible, like with Relay or Peach or Hodl, where you can at least do something KYC-less. Then when you have your Bitcoin, the second point is hodling, where I'm very interested in multi-sig solution. I think Spectre is very, very good. I think Sparrow is also very, very good. And Nunchak is very interesting. Like Liana by Kevin is also very, very interesting. So multi-sig solution, hardware wallet solution. I like Jade, I like Coldcard, I like Trezor. I mean, I used to like Ledger a lot, but recently it's a little bit harder to defend. But it was an interest. I mean, my favorite choice was to use all of them with different security model together in a multi-sig, so you are more covered. Then after you have your security, you need your privacy. So I'm very interested in debate. I'm very active in the CoinJoin debate. I prefer Join Market. I'm a Join Market user and supporter. I think it's the only reliable model that will not get shut down, because the decentralized model eventually has problems. Still, for some people, Whirlpool, I hope, over Sparrow, it's useful, and Wasabi is useful. I have a lot of ethical problem with both. Wasabi for the block list, the chain analysis based UTXO stuff, and Samurai for many other things. So we fight a lot. But I think that it's better to use a tool that I dislike than not to have to use any CoinJoin tool at all. Right. And then when you finally have your safety, you can think about more advanced stuff like Lightning Network, because if you want to pay, basically, Lightning Network is the way to go. It works. It's not vaporware. I use it every day since many years at this point. I use Core Lightning mostly, but other implementation are also cool. I also use Phoenix. I like Breeze. Finally, one of the wallets that we have seen born in our community, which is green, is implementing Lightning. We tried
it today, for the first time.
Yeah, for the first time. In 2013, I was an intern of Lawrence in Green Address, the company that was acquired by Blockstream. So I worked for Lawrence and for Green. So it broke my heart not to be able to suggest Green for Lightning in everyday life. So finally,
it's happening.
Green is back. Green is back.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And what about open source secure element?
That's very exciting.
Yeah, it's so exciting.
Today there was the first presentation.
In Tropic Square.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Let's hope that that's the thing. Because right now the trade-off is between local security, very hard to break, but obscure, so the producer can do everything, like Ledger. Or on the other side, you have some security which may be more transparent for the producer, like Trezor, but local attacks are so easy. So open source secure element is the holy grail. And maybe it's coming.
Maybe, yeah.
It's on a good way, and there are already like the prototype chips, and I'm gonna link the Tropic Square talk if there is any. I didn't catch it today. Definitely. So, Mir, you used to work on like design, like the Satoshi design, right?
Yeah, actually, it was a company based on communication and marketing, but it was called Design because we have a strong team of designer. So we did a lot with graphics and design. I have a degree in communication, actually, that I pivot on other stuff. But then I decided to leave the company because, the reason is quite simple. I wanted to do something really maximalist. And it was not possible. But I still think that we need something like that, a bridge. My idea of a communication company is a company where there are experts in Bitcoin and also in communication, and they are working together because they are good at communication in design or marketing or whatever they are doing. But most of the time, they are not so good in knowing everything that is going on in the Bitcoin space. But if we can work together, and if we can have a sort of general knowledge about the work of the other, we can connect all of these our skills and create something that can really work. But because from my experience, there are good communication company, but they don't speak Bitcoin. And that's a problem because you spend a lot of time trying to get into the space. They want to do something that it's not going to communicate well to Bitcoiners. They are not speaking the same language. They don't understand not only the technology, I mean the basic they don't understand meme or the importance of meme in Bitcoin, and I don't have the time to start from the basics. But if I can be the bridge between those words, this could work really fast. It could be really amazing for everybody. So yes, it's something I still strongly believe. Actually, I'm very surprised by this. I would say all the communication from this conference in Prague, because it was
very close to your ideas.
Yeah, it's very close to my idea of a bridge, because connecting the words, it's something I really worked on for a very small conference. It was also about Bitcoin in Italy, in Venice. It was called Bridges. So the idea is very similar to this one, but now here is so giant and so big, and I'm so excited to see that the idea is being represented so well and is working so well. Excited because it's something that I envisioned for a long time, and we tried. It was a very small experiment actually, but yeah.
Timing is strange. The problem is that market-driven people usually have to follow the market. And when the market is irrational, where the market is rubbish, it's very hard to resist the impulse to follow the market. And the maximalists want to remain true, but that remaining true may insulate them from the market, make them unable to communicate to the market, and you have to stay somehow in between.
You have to stay in between. But for example, something that is completely normal in marketing is use IDV on social media. But for a Bitcoiner, too much of that could be a turn off. Something that, oh my God, they are shilling me something. What's behind that? So you have to find the right balance between doing your job in market and make professionalism. You cannot apply the same type of rules. I mean, for any type of for any field, but for Bitcoin, it's probably even more difficult to understand all the language that is going on in the space, and the target. Whoa, the target is one of a kind. Beautiful, beautiful target.
I remember when we had the research lab in Milan, I was putting out some communication, and an intern was sharing it on Twitter with fintech, #fintech, #crypto, #blockchain. Stop there. It's hard to explain, because that's what he was taught in school. Like back, that's how you do marketing, but not with Bitcoiners. Bitcoiner a different culture.
No, it's better not to do marketing.
Yeah, not at all at this point.
Please don't do anything. You're going to do the best for your company sometimes, or for the meetup.
Yeah, shut up.
Shut up.
Right. Unfortunately, I have time for one last question, and one of the followers asked to ask you about your bodyguard. So what's up with that?
So let's say this is part of the first question in a way. The Italian community that was basically inexistent 2 years ago became so giant that now I have strange mythologies about me. This is the bodyguard is basically the end of a very gross joke that I cannot tell you on a podcast, but it's a representative of people that I don't know personally, that are joking with me every day on Twitter, that I didn't know 2 years ago. And now I basically, so let's put it this way. There are many people in Italy that are more knowledgeable about Bitcoin than me. Lawrence Naum, the creator of Green Address, my former boss, is more knowledgeable than me. Many developers are more knowledgeable than me. Some people working at Traduzione Mises in Italian are more knowledgeable about Austrian economics than me. But of that old guard, most of them basically burn out a little bit and get tired of getting around. I resisted more. So for this new wave, I'm a little bit of an icon. They call me the high prior of Bitcoin, which is ironic, of course, but it's like there is some cult of personality which they are pretending to build around me, which is fun, because I'm one of the few of the first generation that are still there, like blessing them.
Well, with the same enthusiasm, Giacomo, because you have the same enthusiasm during all this year.
I'm not bored by Bitcoin at all.
Absolutely.
Right, perfect. So Thank you so much for taking the time in our schedule to be here. And I'll try to link to everything that was mentioned. It was quite a lot of projects and talks. And yeah, let's jam. Let's go to the party.
Let's go to sing.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you next time. All right. And thank you for watching the Stackuj podcast, and see you some other time. Thanks. Bye. Thank you for listening to Stackuj podcast. You can check out more of my stuff at Twitter, that's @SatsJoseph. And just recently I had a book about Bitcoin published, that's in English, and the book is called Bitcoin, Separation of Money and State. You can check that out at brains.com. This show is brought to you by Trezor hardware wallets, that's trezor.io, Brains mining tools, Bitcoin mining tools, that's brains.com, satsback.com. That's when you make any kind of purchases, you can get some sats back from the purchase. Great way to start stacking some sats, satsback.com. And biomasičko.cz, that's a local farm in Czech Republic for the highest quality beef. See you next time.